Hello, listeners, and welcome back to another episode of the No Nay Never podcast. I'm your host, Natalie Bromley, and we have a double whammy for you this week. In part one, I sit down with regular analyst Tom Whittaker, and we look over that heartbreaking defeat at home against Liverpool on Sunday. Poor Hannibal cutting a very lonely figure as that ball struck his arm to concede a 91st minute penalty after his team had defended with their absolute lives. It would have been an incredible point after what can only be described as a sublime defensive performance. But the main show is what you've all been waiting for. It's Friday night. It is, of course, the preview show. And I'm joined by Dave Statman Roberts to look ahead to what has now become a very key fixture at home to Forest this weekend. So let's bring the main man himself in. Dave, the best view in football. How are you?
I'm very well. I'm getting a feeling of deja vu, though. I don't know about you.
Stop it. Do you know what, listeners? Dave is the absolute worst. Like, there's a reason why we don't stream the preview shows or, in fact, the analysis shows live is because we make too many mistakes and it's generally
Speak
chaos.
for yourself.
Hang on a minute. Last Thursday, when did we end up recording, Dave? Saturday morning. And why was that?
Yes.
That was your fault. But Dave always calls me out. He's always like, take 3. I'm like, okay, sit down, cupcake. Enough. Anyway, what have you got for us on the show this evening?
Yeah, plenty of stats, newspaper headlines, look at Forest, and yeah, we're going to see how the land lies ahead of the big game on Saturday afternoon.
It is. How are you feeling after Sunday's heartbreak? Are you over it yet? I'm not.
No, not really. No, it's another late penalty, 2 in a row. It's tough to take when we could easily have got 2 points out of those. I mean, could easily have nicked a win against Liverpool. I think we played really, really well. So it was heartache to concede a late penalty, and they I think was it 38 games they'd gone and not failed to score. Oh, they've continued the run now. We're nearly with the first team to stop that run. But I think I did mention in last time's preview show about Liverpool's tendency to score late goals.
You did? Yes, I do remember that. I was listening to that bit, Dave. I don't like it when you test me. I start to panic a little bit. I'm just going to move my laptop, listeners, because I think at the moment I'm going to set fire to it by the candle, which is not good. Let's not interrupt this week's podcast with a fire alarm. That's not a good thing. You did warn us, Dave. You see, we do listen and we do pay heed, which is why people should really start subscribing to your database and having a look on there and taking into account what you say, because you talk common sense, and more of that to come. Well, let's kick off this show, I think, by going back to that game at the weekend against Liverpool. And I sat down earlier on this week with Tom Whittaker. We had a look at all of the talking points coming out of that game. We didn't dwell too much on the red card for Ogochukwu, but we did have a look at everything else, including a surprise centre-half performance by Josh Loren, which none of us saw coming. So get a cup of tea, listeners, and let's hand over and see what Tom had to say about that game. Tom, hello, sir. How are you?
Evening, Natalie. Yes, very well, thank you. All the better for seeing you at the turf on Sunday as well.
Yes, it was, and I was running as well. I was on my own, and I ended up getting pulled over to do a bit of recording as well. And I was like, I just felt really bad. I was like, "Hello, bye, see ya. This is really good." And I got really confused. I couldn't remember from the 456,000 messages we had in our group chat about the change in the where the fans go from cricket field. I was like, "Why are you off? Like, should you not? Is this where you need to go?" And you were like, "Woman, what are you talking about? I sit here." So yeah, it was quite a nice interaction. It was very lovely to see you. I do like it when the team get together in real life. It doesn't happen very often, so I do enjoy it immensely. Just thee and me this week. The team are all over the place at the moment. We are going to be joined with a little cameo by a very exciting member of our panel shortly, which we'll come on to in a few minutes' time. But yeah, it's just you and me to basically look back on that heartbreaking result. Tom, 2 weeks in a row, the Clarets have been denied what would have been a fantastically well-earned point by the penalty spot. And let's go straight there, because I think this is probably an appropriate place to start. A moment of madness from Hannibal. You can't excuse it. Was a penalty. It was a clear penalty. I think you can analyse as much as you want how close it was to the ball, how fast it was going. I suspect the Liverpool player knew absolutely and intended to kick it at his arm, because that's the strategy that is adopted in that clever play that's now adopted by the top Premier League sides. But it just felt so disheartening for those defenders who put everything on the line for 90 minutes to lose that point.
Yeah, it's how they won the Champions League a few years ago, isn't it? And they played Spurs in the final. 2 minutes just beats it. Moussa Sissoko's arm gets a penalty, and then the rest is history. They've obviously got previous for it. Yeah, I think you're right. I think that was realistically the only way they were ever going to score, because we defended so well. We kept them at arm's length, just cut off every little channel. They could not get a ball through. And it was only in those last 10 minutes, I think, when Ugochukwu went off, I think they kind of smelled blood a little bit. I think prior to that, they were maybe kind of thinking it's not our day today, and the game was petering out somewhat. And then after that, he brought on the two kind of the attacking fullbacks, and then suddenly they just had a man on the overlap sometimes, and it was Frimpong that was causing the problems. Got a shot off a couple of minutes before that Dubravka had to save, and then obviously it's him who puts the cross in that Hannibal, as you say. The penalty, unfortunately, is correctly given. I think the debate that you'd have, if you were going to have one, would be, should that be a penalty? The rules say deliberate handball. I don't think he's deliberately putting his arms up to block. I think, like you say, it's just so close to him and hit with such speed that the natural reaction is to flinch and go like that. And unfortunately, if you do that and flinch and the ball hits your arm and deflects out for a corner, then it's going to be a penalty. We saw it, I remember, and I remember it very well because I was on it. When we played Wolves in the COVID season at home, there's like a last-minute goal where Chris Wood tried like an overhead kick, missed it, and then their defender put his arm up like that, and the ball hit his arm, and we got a penalty in the last minute. And I remember going on to doing a Wolves podcast straight away after. I was just getting ripped to shreds by all these Wolves fans for suggesting that if you put your arms up like that in front of your face and it hits your arms, you should probably be a little bit braver in the box. Yeah.
Well, Rich said that, didn't he? Rich said that in our group chat. He decided that he would take a ball in the face and certain other parts of his body as well if he was getting paid what Burnley players are getting paid each week to play now. I'm not sure what he would take for the salary we pay him at None and Ever, but you never know. Maybe we'll test that in a live feed at some point before the end of the season. So, but yeah, it was. I mean, does that rule need to change? I mean, we talked about this last week. We talked about the way that the game is going, Tom, and it's like what can now be deemed to be a penalty in Premier League football, and what VAR gives it's just I just don't know how do we play the game anymore? How do defenders defend their box? It's just so skewed towards attacking play. It's bizarre.
Yeah, I think the VAR has really put a bit of a different slant on it all as well, hasn't it? It's like that one at Man United the other week in real time. Apart from the Man United players, I don't think anyone really was claiming for a penalty or knew what a penalty would be being looked at for. It was a bit more clear cut on Sunday, and the modern handball rules are very different to what it actually says in the in the rule. Obviously, it states it has to be deliberate, and I think we're agreed that while it is a handball by how the handball laws are these days, he's not deliberately putting his arms up there to try and gain some sort of competitive advantage.
No.
And it kind of just feels like the rules are set up for, when we've defended the box so well for 90 plus minutes, that if these big teams need the ref to pull a rabbit out of the hat for them, they can find some kind of way of giving them. They're so arbitrary as well, and the way they're enforced, like, they always have something at the start of every season where they say, "Oh, we're going to clamp down on this year," and this year it's really pushing in the box. And you had like Brentford and Sunderland where they kind of traded sort of soft penalties for pushes in the box. You had Man United away at Fulham where the Man United defender gives a big two-handed shove in the back of that Fulham player, and they just ignore that. That's fine because it's Man United. They're the only sort of pushing incidents really that I've seen. Oh, there's the West Ham one as well against Spurs, wasn't there? A very soft.
Oh yeah, that's true.
That goal for a push, but I mean, I'm sure if you look back at every goal, every goal scored from a corner, especially, you could find something like that. And I think when it's so kind of cherry picked and so inconsistent like that as well, it leaves you more open to these kind of suggestions of conscious or unconscious bias and these kind of things. And the introduction of VAR hasn't helped with that. I think it's made it worse because
I agree.
The referees now have got the opportunity to see these decisions slowed down, take as long as they want with them, and and they still get them wrong. And when it's like a snapshot that you're only seeing briefly, you can understand refs missing things, you can understand refs getting things wrong. When they've got the opportunity to watch it for 5 minutes and they still get it wrong, that's when you're really left confused, isn't it? It's in a real state at the minute, refereeing, and to me, the best thing to do would just be to get bangs from before, but just to get rid of the AR. Can't stand it. It makes everything worse. And that's just kind of live with the imperfections. But like I said.
And I think what we need to look at with this, Tom, is that, you know, for that defensive play, and the reason why the Clarets so deserved a point at Turf Moor at the weekend was just down to, quite frankly, one of the most sublime defensive performances that I think we've ever seen from a Burnley side. And that's taken into account a decade under Sean Dyche's defence. And I think it's been met with real universal praise and not a snobbery at all by broadcasters and in the press and by a lot of summarisers who basically recognise that Burnley not only came with a really good game plan to try and stop them getting absolutely rolled over by Liverpool, but actually executed it really, really well as well. From your perspective, well, I guess the one place to start with that in terms of that sublime defence was the shock for us all about 2 minutes into the game at the realisation that Josh Loren was a makeshift centre-half. Not one of our bingo cards, Tom.
No, and it was a bit of a surprise. But when you see him play there, it does make sense, because I think my big problem with Laurent is not what he gives you off the ball. You know, he's big, he's strong, he works hard, he gets in the way. But he doesn't use the ball very well, in my opinion. And obviously, when you play in the middle of midfield, you need to recycle, you need to move it forward. That's a problem. But you know, it didn't matter what you did with the ball on Sunday. All he needed to do was get in the way, work hard, kick people, you know, and he did it superbly. You know, he's exactly what you want in that situation. He's someone who's just going to run through a brick wall for you, stand up to everything, not shirk a tackle, not shirk a challenge, and he was just a nuisance. And it must have been so irritating for those Liverpool attackers. You know, every time they've just made a little run around the corner, just a little slide rule through ball, and then just suddenly out of nowhere, Laurent appears and intercepts it. He was fantastic, and it really epitomised, you know, what the performance was. It's a team that's not been put together. All right, I mean, by our standards, it's been put together for a lot of money, but the conversation in the last 2 or 3 years in the Premier League has been, you know, how can teams come up from the Championship and compete even when they spend £100 million? And you know, you could argue really we've put together a bit of a blueprint for how to do that. I mean, we're playing a team who won the league last year and has added £400 million worth of talent to that team. And you know, there's only a sort of frustrating handball penalty between us in the end, and we really did deserve a draw out of that. And I think, look, what you said there about the pundits, I think that's what it's borne out. I mean, you had the normal whinging Liverpool fans on Twitter, didn't you, saying that we were too defensive and too negative, but that's what we want, isn't it? You know, we had years of that, and we used to love it when opposition fans got annoyed because they couldn't beat us, and obviously they did beat us, but it wasn't for the want of our trying. And if we play like that in the majority of games, and certainly if we defend like that in the majority of games, we're gonna pick points up. We're gonna be competitive. We're gonna stay in games, and it's not going to be like it was 2 years ago when we'd turn up, you know, basically just wave opposition players through, let them have a shot on goal, concede 5 at home every other week, and go down with a whimper. So, yeah, as I say, Laurent really epitomised that. You know, he's a 500 grand signing from Stoke City, and yet he was keeping Wirtz and Gakpo quiet for most of the game.
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly considering where the team is developing, I think he's probably a better centre-half than he is a midfielder right now. And I don't mean that to be disrespectful. I just think it's like, you know what, you might have found your absolute calling here. I thought at one point that poor Scotty Parker had lost his marbles when it showed this. I was like, we were all in the stands going, it's Josh Loren at centre-half, what's going on here? But I thought it was absolutely sublime. And you know, like you say, he did a real job there helping out. One thing that I would have to comment on, though, is just we talk about class defenders, and we've had some amazing and incredible defenders coming through the Turf Moor ranks over the years, but particularly on Sunday, the trio of Dubravka, Estev, and Kyle Walker was something else. Absolutely something else. I mean, where do we even start talking about the class that comes from those three? I'm not like, I am so happy having Dubravka in the nets, and I think it's, you know, I love James Trafford and I wish him all the best, but it does feel, given where Burnley are right now and where they're going to be pitching this season, that having Dubravka in the nets over James Trafford is absolutely where we need to be right now.
Yeah, I think the thing that really stood out for me was Dubravka, because in terms of shots to save, he didn't really have a lot to do. Like, there weren't many, they didn't really get many clear shots off, and certainly not many shots on target. The thing was, it was when the balls were getting swung under the bar, you're much more confident with him coming off his line than you were, well, certainly in the Premier League season 2 years ago, Trafford. You know, when he was coming off his line, and obviously we all remember that Luton goal where he crumbled, and you just weren't confident where he was a bit flappy. Obviously, he was better last year, but we don't know how he would have stood up to Premier League to defences this year, and that was a big thing for me. Dubravka, when he came out, he'd get something on it, he'd get rid of it, he'd get it clear, and for £2 million, he really does look like a really good, clever bit of business, because he's more than good enough, I'd say, for where we are, as you say.
Yeah, Newcastle fans love him.
Yeah, I've seen a couple say that they preferred him to Pope, which, I mean, I don't know. Pope was very good once. I don't think Dubravka's hit those heights for us yet, but it does tell you something, you know, if they considered him on that level. And
Newcastle fans don't really like Pope. They don't like the fact that he can't play out from the back. They don't like the ball at his feet. And it's like, well, I can't really comment on that, Newcastle fans, because for the whole time he was at Burnley, he never needed to. He played under Sean Dyche in a Burnley side, trying to avoid the drop. At no point in his career did he ever need to have that ball at his feet. You know, if it ever got past the faces of Tarkowski and Ben Mee, then Pope would be the last man, but he never needed to be playing that out from the back. So let's not worry about that. I think one of the things that I want to pick up on, just to finish off the analysis of the game, mainly because not an awful lot happened in the game. It was such a good performance by the Clarets that actually there weren't that many talking points, really. We'll come on to sending off in a minute. I think if there's a do we say criticism? If there's one thing to keep an eye on, it's not a criticism. If there's just one thing to be mindful of, that very deep, resilient defensive display works brilliantly because you've always got the opportunity to counter, and you just need one break, one fine margin to go your way, and you can nick a goal. What was really apparent to me on Sunday was that the final ball, when we, in the 2 or 3 opportunities where we did get a chance to try and break, that real quality ball up front really wasn't there. And I do think that there is that there is something that's perhaps lacking in the team at the moment, is somebody who can find that really fantastic pass and send it over to Jadon Anthony, or put it up top to Foster. I mean, Foster was playing quite deep at the weekend because he was helping out in midfield. You know, there's no point in running the line on his own because we weren't getting anything there. And that's, you know, Jadon Anthony's improved massively, and I think he's really great. I wonder whether, like, is there an alternative here of when we do have to play that, particularly 5 at the back, defensive strategies? What do we do? Is there a tweak that we can do in the team, Tom, that can improve the quality of that ball where we can find the odd counter?
To be honest, I think we're still working off quite a small sample size. You know, we've only played 4 games now, and we've scored 4 goals in those 4 games, which I don't think really, when you look at the opposition we've played, is that bad of a return. I think Liverpool are a one-off in a lot of ways, and it was really striking to me how Van Dijk can just come across and snuff these situations out without breaking a sweat. He is something else, and he's a Rolls Royce. Even Canate, I thought, had a fairly decent game. As you say, there was 2 or 3 opportunities where we just got in behind, got some space, and then the final ball was poor. I would say, like you mentioned, Anthony, and I think if you look at his output so far this season, he's got 2 goals and an assist from 4 games. I think we'd have all taken that. And the Sunderland second goal is a perfect example of how we can play this counter-attacking stuff. You know, just moving it neatly in the midfield. Cullen finds that ball out, and then suddenly, and I know that's a team obviously who were chasing a goal, they were already behind, but we found that gap, and we took the chance brilliantly. So I'd say I'd have to see us play a few more games in this kind of deep counter-attacking style before I said there's nothing in that counter-attack for us. And I think especially it'll be interesting to see, for example, if we're setting up similarly, and it will kind of make sense to set up similarly on Saturday against an Ange Postecoglou team who are going to be very attacking and perhaps leave gaps at the back or have a very high line. I think we're going to get more joy against Forest centre-halves than we are against Virgil van Dijk in particular. And yeah, to me, I'd say there are obviously, we're obviously going to have a quality gap compared to other teams in the league, but I'm not too worried yet about the person. I think it's the game on Sunday was quite a big one to judge them on, and it's particularly difficult when, as you say, Foster and Anthony are playing like sort of defensive midfielders for most of the game. They're shutting about. When they both got subbed, they both looked absolutely knackered. They'd run the socks off, and
they're really hard.
When you're playing a game where you're only going to get like 2-3 chances, you're exhausted, and not just physically, mentally as well. It's kind of not surprising maybe that you might misplace a pass or two in that scenario. So, yeah, I think it's certainly something we know we're going to need goals this season, and we certainly didn't ever look like we were going to get one on Sunday. But I'm more confident that if we take that approach against Forest, we're going to get a bit more joy and certainly a few more sights of goal.
Yeah, I mean, one of the concerns against Forest, obviously, which is annoying considering this is becoming a key game for us. Considering this is definitely one where we wouldn't have thought we would get 3 points from, but given their challenges this season, it's certainly a good time to play them and a good time to try and get some points off them. Is that following his double yellow cards and his sending off, we're going to be missing Ugochukwu. How do you anticipate Scott Parker's going to change that? How is he going to line up for them at the weekend?
I guess for this one, it's a bit more simple, just merely because Luis didn't start against Liverpool, so it's just going to be like for like Ugochukwu for Luis, and you leave Hannibal in, and then going forward, then it's like for me, I'd probably be playing Luis and Cullen Holding and Ugochukwu a bit further forward. What did you think of Luis, by the way, when he came on?
Yeah, he looks class. He looks real class, right?
He's unbelievable. I know you said the octopus. It's right. It was amazing the amount of times just his leg appeared out of nowhere and just cut. I was like,
it was incredible. Yeah, it was incredible. And I think we said this a couple of weeks ago on the podcast, but when all three of them are fit, that midfield of Cullen, Luis, and Ugochukwu, it's like Burnley has no business having a midfield of that quality in the Premier League. And I just think this has just been a really fantastic transfer window for us. I think it's going to be really, really good. Really good. And I think, it's a real shame because Saturday would have been a really good opportunity to try the three of them and see if we could really put Forest to the test. But yeah, it's not going to happen. I'm presuming we're going to go back to 4 at the back. We don't need to use 5 at the back against Forest at home, surely.
I wonder if it'll maybe be more like it was against Sunderland, where instead of Laurent playing centre half, you've got Walker playing there, and then it's 5 when we don't have the ball, and then Walker goes to right back. And if you play Brun Larsen or somebody to like as a winger when we have got the ball, and as a fullback when we haven't, probably something a bit more like that. Don't think you really need. Not that Forest are a bad side, of course, but they're not obviously on the same level as Liverpool, so you perhaps don't need to be as deep and without as much of an outlet as we were in that game. So yeah, I think probably more of a 4 when we do have the ball. Yeah, I agree with you.
Good stuff. Okay, Dave. We've got another, that's the beauty of football. There's always a new game, and we now have got to pick ourselves up. We've got to get ourselves going again, and we get to have back-to-back home ties, this time against Forest, a side who are, shall we say, struggling quite a little bit with a very bizarre sacking of their manager, an even bigger bizarre appointment of Andrew of going in there, and they haven't exactly started well. Do you want to kick off this week's preview show then, please, by giving us your opening stats?
Unlike some of the other teams we'll face this season, only one of our previous 9 seasons in the Premier League have seen us face Nottingham Forest. After a 1-1 draw at the City Ground early on in the 2023-24 season, Forest were the visitors to Turf Moor for the very last match of that rather forgettable Premier League campaign in May 2024. With the Clarets relegation already confirmed, we went down 2-1, with former striker Chris Wood scoring both of the visitors' goals inside the first 15 minutes. Josh Cullen later pulled a goal back in the second half. After a couple of very tough games and narrow defeats, as we've mentioned, away at Manchester United and then at home to Liverpool, we'll be trying to avoid conceding any late penalties this time, in the hope that we can register a first Premier League victory against Ange Postecoglou's current side.
Yeah, indeed. Do we think that we will get it? Who knows? Who knows? Well, I think what we will do before Dave and I have a little bit of a chat about this game, let's head back over to young Tom, who not only gave us his analysis of that Liverpool game, but gave us his thoughts ahead of this game as well. So we're going to preview now. This is Tom Whittaker back to the studio, letting us know what he thought, what he thinks, of the upcoming game against Forest. Okay, how key is Saturday's fixture now against Forest, Tom? Is this one where we should be looking for 3 points, and is a point enough?
I think if we'd have got at least 1 point from the last two, if we'd have got a point off Man United or Liverpool or both, then you'd probably be fairly happy just picking up a point in this one. I think 2 defeats on the spin. I think if you offered me a point, I'd say no. I think 3 are gettable. I'm not saying we will win. I could see us winning. I could see us losing. I could see it being a draw. I don't think a draw is a disaster. You want to keep picking up points at a steady rate, don't you? And we're still not in the bottom 3 yet, just about. But I think given how difficult the fixtures we've had to start, given that Forest, in my opinion, have shot themselves in the foot a little bit by replacing Nuno with
yeah,
then it makes it more of an appealing game. And obviously, City next week, it's difficult to see us getting anything from there realistically. Villa away, I know Villa have had a really poor start, but that's going to be a difficult game. And it's only kind of when you get into October, November that we start having more of a run of what look on paper to be more winnable games, or certainly games against the teams who are going to be down there with us. So yeah, I'd say the next 3 are difficult games, and this is the most winnable, particularly because it's the only home game of the 3. So yeah, for me, it should be one we're aiming for 3 points in, and that's not to, as I say, not to downplay what Forest are. I think they are a really good side, and I think rumours of their demise have been somewhat exaggerated. I don't think they're going to be top 7 again, but I don't think they're going to be struggling in the bottom third this season. So a win at home will be a big win, but it's doable. I think and it's a good time to play them with yeah, for sure. Especially with Postecoglou just coming in, and they didn't look great, albeit away against Arsenal. They didn't look great for his first game. So
no,
good.
Excellent stuff. Okay, thanks, Tom. We are going to head over now to the preview show studio to get some stats from Dave ahead of that game against Forest. So thanks, Tom, and we'll see you next week. Yeah, lots to think about here, Dave. I mean, one of the questions that I posed to Tom, and I think I kind of know what your answer is going to be, but I'm going to ask it anyway, is what, how, given the state of Forest at the moment, and given where they are in the league, and given their just very unsettled climate at the moment, if we're going to get 9 wins this season to get us to survive, this has to be one of them, right?
Yeah, it could potentially be a good time to play them. New manager coming in, not quite being able to put his stamp on the side. So yeah, home game. It's a good opportunity, but we know there's no easy games in the Premier League. I think we only had 2 home wins in total in our last Premier League campaigns. We're going to need to chalk up quite a few more this time if we're going to be making sure that we're clear of that bottom 3. So yeah, good chance on Saturday, but it won't be easy.
And what are your thoughts? I mean, obviously, we heard what Tom thought about the midfield dilemma. Would you change? I don't think we need to go as defensive, as brilliant as that defensive display was against Liverpool. This is a game where we should be looking to be more proactive and actually go ahead and try and win the game. And with Ugochukwu obviously missing down to suspension, what is your solution for the starting lineup? What do you do with midfield?
I don't think we go too gung ho. I think that there are changes we can make within games. I think Scott Parker has shown already that he's willing to change and adapt and look at the opposition we're playing and put a team out that's best placed to face them and get a positive result. So I think that we got the good win against Sunderland. We've been unlucky to get points elsewhere. We do need to try and get some points on the board. So it's a case of, can we try and push a little bit in terms of midfield, but maybe not go too far? I think that's it's a tough balancing act, isn't it? To try and get that balance right and not go too far and leave yourself too open.
Yeah, no, I completely get that. So then picking up then on the second part of that question, what do you do about Ugochukwu? How do you solve that problem? What do you do in terms of personnel?
Obviously Josh Cullen's first on the team sheet. He's captain this season. He's going to be in there. He's got a few options, hasn't he, in terms of who he can swap around. And it is only, I think I'm right in saying, it's just a 1-game suspension, isn't it? For that, it wasn't a three match ban. So it's just the one game we're going to miss him for. But I think we've got options there, haven't we? We've got options in midfield. I think we've spent wisely in the transfer window in terms of options to get in there, and it's a case of it could perm any 2 from 3, couldn't he? Maybe in terms of the options he's got for midfield. I think maybe up front in terms of the balance there is kind of that maybe picks itself. I think Lyle Foster again showed on Sunday that although he didn't score, he's capable of putting in a positive performance as he has done in the last 2 or 3 games. He seems to be on form. I think we just kind of go in there with a positive mindset and see what we can do the best with what we've got, basically.
Yeah, I do agree with all of that. I guess my just reinforce that question. It's like, who do you put alongside Cullen then? Because Lewis isn't fit. I don't think he will start. It's probably going to have to be Josh Loren and go for it. Isn't it?
I think so. Yeah, obviously we've got that option to have him in there. He's played there, or we used to him playing there. That might be the option to have him and Cullen in midfield.
Sounds good. Excellent stuff. I love this. Right, let's move on to what is now becoming my favourite part of I do this every single year. Every season in the preview show, I get really excited about one particular section, don't I, of the preview show, and it becomes my absolute favourite. So, headlines. Dave, you have picked us a headline to highlight, and we've got some newspaper cuttings to show. Apologies for those of you who are listening to this on the podcast subscription. This part of the show is visual and it is now only on YouTube. However, when we've got an amalgamated show like we have this week, a double header, we will put it on the podcast as well. So you don't need to head to YouTube so you can have a look at these headlines. And when you're there, drop us a subscribe because I think you will like what we've been put on there. Dave, what have you got for us for this section, please?
Well, it was a tricky one this week. We've only had one previous home Premier League match against Nottingham Forest, as we mentioned, which we lost. So I'm going to cheat a little bit for this week's headline highlights feature.
Dave Roberts, you never cheat. What is this nonsense?
Well, wait for it. I'm going to cheat a little bit this week for the headline highlights feature and select a classic championship clash. Bit of alliteration for you there. Instead of subjecting us all to a more detailed look at a Premier League defeat. And when you need a backup, who better to call on than Sam Vokes, who bagged a brace for us in a home win at Turf Moor from 11 years ago in February 2014. The game was all but over in the first half, with goals from Scott Arfield and, as we mentioned, a Sam Vokes brace, giving us a 3-0 lead at the break. And although Jamal Abdoun found the net from the rebound with a header after Tom Heaton saved his initial attempt from the penalty spot, it was the Clarets who took all 3 points. And this time we have a selection of newspaper headlines for you from the Burnley Express, the Telegraph and Argos, and the Observer. There are 3 papers this time. So if we move on to the first one, we've got the match feature, which is the front page of the section in the Burnley Express. Forest cut down to size. Arfield and Vokes net in stunning display. And then on to the match report itself. That had the headline, Clarets continue to defy pundits with Forest win. At times, Burnley were stunning in victory, and showing some match action photographs on there. And then I don't have the Telegraph one this time. That wasn't in the archive, but we have got the Telegraph and Argus, the Bradford-based paper. That was the headline, Dyche hails vintage Vokes. Again, a bit more alliteration for you. And then finally, we've got the Observer, which was the headline of that was Vokes double, keeps promotion hopes growing. That was obviously ended in promotion that season. We were runners up, weren't we, to Leicester City that season, going up when probably most people didn't expect us to. It was a bit of a surprise that season, but a really good campaign. So it's good to look back on that season and a really good home victory against Nottingham Forest.
That was such a good season, was that one. I loved the team at that season, and I just loved everything about what the team was about. It was just a really great team. Dave, I've just seen what's coming up next. Oh, look at that. Okay, we're just going to sit here for a while. Michael Kitely. Look at that. Look at what a team that was, Dave.
Yeah, I think he had an assist. He crossed. Maybe it came off another defender first, but he certainly put the cross in for one of Sam Vokes' goals, which I think was like a wicked deflection, if I remember rightly.
Ooh, that's all right. I'm just going to keep this on here for a while. This is really boring for our listeners that are there, but it genuinely is. Let's move on. Come on, let's move on. We are getting sidetracked here. Now, Dave, before we move on to the referee and to finish off this week's podcast, we do need to let our listeners know how they can access your database. And we have got a double header. Oh no, look, Sam Vokes has come back on. Let me get rid of that. You've now got two concurrent databases that our listeners can access. So why don't you let them go through that, and you can explain how they can get access to them.
Yeah, it's just a bookmark page really for the Burnley FC scrapbook. I'm trying to get the biggest Burnley FC scrapbook on the internet, and there's well over 30,000 pages, cuttings, call them what you will, and they are from the Burnley Express. That's basically got maybe most Burnley Express. I'm guessing 98% plus of Burnley Express match reports going back from post-war. There are some pre-war ones as well, but looking at the post-war period up until about 2020. And then recently I've got access to another newspaper database, and that's got all sorts of papers from national, local titles, and I'm trying to clip as many of those as I can within my subscription. I've got a 6-month subscription, and I think I'm about 5 months through it. I've got about a month left to see what I can do, and then see if I can get another 6 months and get even more. So we're up to about 19,000 something additional clippings.
Wow.
I'm trying to get the headlines. So there's another page as well, which is what we're using for the preview show this season. And you can see up to 4 headlines for matches: Burnley Express, usually Telegraph, and then a couple of others where they're available. So it's a case of you can go on there, you can pick a particular match, and that's got all the information. Plus, you've got links on there where you can go and look at the actual scans. You can click on a button and it will open up the scans like we've shown earlier in the show for that particular match against Nottingham Forest. There's a link for that if anyone's interested. The scrapbook page was
is it this one? Hang on, let me see if I can make that bigger. There you go.
Yeah. The scrapbook page is bit.ly/ and then all in uppercase BFC scrapbook. That will show you the 2 pages. But the news finder one, which is the headlines feature, that's got its own link, although it is on this page. That's bit.ly/ BFC news finder. And then more generally, in terms of the other database stuff I've done, there is a menu page including this, which is, again, another short link for that, which is bit.ly/ Burnley Stats QL, which is the main Burnley Stats menu page.
Is this one?
That's that one, yes.
There we are. Sorry. I was almost there with my slickness. Excellent stuff. Well done, Dave. Okay, listeners, do please check that out. It's a fantastic database. And why don't you take this opportunity during the podcast to have a little bit of a pause and to get some housekeeping in order. Subscribe to the podcast either via the YouTube channel or through your usual podcast provider, and give Dave's database a check-in. And while you're there, dropping some subs, that would be very much appreciated. And you can get that second 6 months subscription, and then I don't have to pay for it. That would be very nice, listeners. I would like that very much. Okay, Dave, this week's referee, please. Are we having a break from Michael Oliver? That would be marvelous.
We are. That's the good news. The bad news is the aptly named Tom Bramall of Sheffield will be in charge of the match at Turf Moor this Saturday afternoon. Burnley have failed to win on any of the 4 previous occasions he's taken charge of one of our games. Only one of those matches was at Turf Moor. That was a 1-1 draw against Wolves in April 2024. The only red card we've seen in Tom Bramall's 4 previous Burnley matches was shown to Watford's Hassan Kamara, although Watford went on to win that match at Vicarage Road by a 1-0 scoreline. London-based official Paul Howard has been appointed as the video assistant referee.
Good stuff. Okay, let me attend to a few bits here. What is next on our script? I'll tell you what is next in our script, Dave. I want you to follow in Tom's footsteps and give me a score prediction, what you think ahead of the game and how confident you are feeling.
I'm going to go for a Burnley win. I think we can turn it around. We lost 2-1 the last Premier League game of the last Premier League season we were in, and played them at Turf Moor the last game of the season. I think we're going to turn it around. We're going to win 2-1, but I think I have a sneaky feeling that Chris Wood might score for them.
No, boo! Am I allowed to boo him?
If you like.
Thanks, Dave. I do like it when you give me permission. That's excellent. Well, listeners, you know the drill by now. Drop us a note in the comments and let us know what you think the scoreline will be coming into this weekend's fixture. We would love to hear from you. That, my friends, is all we have time for. That is this week's podcast wrapped up. We are very much looking forward to a Saturday game at Turf Moor, and one that's going to be winnable and one that we're going to win. So let us all get to Turf Moor and raise the roof. This season feels very different than 2 years ago. It feels like we've got a team that's united and a team that really battles for that badge and a set of supporters who are very much behind them. So I cannot wait for this game on the weekend. My thanks go to my colleagues Tom and to Statman Dave for joining me this week's episode and for giving up their hard work and time to producing this podcast. Do make sure you subscribe and keep an eye out on socials next week for the analysis show, looking back on that Forest game, and the preview show next Friday night when me and Dave will be looking forward to the next Premier League fixture. I've been Natalie Bromley. This has been the No Nay Never podcast. Until next time. The No Nay Never podcast is brought to you in association with the talkSPORT Fan Network. Our host and editor is Natalie Bromley, and the show is produced by Matt Moss. Our resident statistician is Dave Roberts, and our FPL expert is Adam Dennett. The Analysis Show team is collectively Tom Whittaker, Rich Steele, George Poole, Charlotte Rigby and Adam Dennett. Our music is provided by George Gaskell, and our newsletter team is headed up by Jamie Smith. If you don't already, you can subscribe to our newsletter by visiting nonaynever.substack.com. Thanks as ever go to our partners talkSPORT. We are proud to be associated with the talkSPORT Fan Network.